Hi, John Capobianco here after an amazing day at Networking Field Day 37 where I presented Selector's solution. Went really well. What a great panel. What interesting questions. Now, I was able to get back to MCP development. And that is really the beauty and the luxury of MCP is how easy it is to integrate into your solutions. And I'm going to go over that. I'm going to show you how I've integrated sequential thinking, Google Maps, as well as Slack. How do you integrate like those three systems in a few hours, right? How does it happen? It's because of the MCP abstractions and the tooling and the way they've released this stuff. So let's take a look, all right? And don't be overwhelmed. This has only been out since, December, call it late November of last year, so 4 months now as of March. So this is the prompt. We're going to start here. Python 3 MCP client, my client. Remember, it's client server like TFTP or World Wide Web. What can you tell me about this packet capture? If you find public IPs, please do a comprehensive lookup of the IP. If you find a geolocation, please also identify its elevation. Please use your reasoning and sequentially go over the packet and IP data to create a GitHub report and automate your network in the Packet Conversations repository. And let's just make sure that that's the name of the repository, and we'll go there now and take a look at the conversations that have been happening and track this file. So Packet Conversations, which is public, and we have some various files in there. And hopefully we can see something get added today, and it is called Packet Conversations. Okay. Automate your network. Packet Conversations repository. Email John. And let's change this email to my personal email. That way we can take a look at the email that we get. So please send an email to John at, and I'm going to change the email here quickly, a report as well, please. In addition, and this is where it gets kind of cool. I'm going to talk about it for a second. In addition, please send your highlights of your report to Slack and then the channel ID. Take your time. Now, the channel ID is not ideal, but I'm going to talk about the Slack once I get to that in a second. All right, so how do we add these servers? We're going to go to the Model Context Protocol servers, example servers, and find the servers that we wanted. So for example, we were talking about Google Maps. Let's stop at Google Maps. Now I want to highlight that there are issues on Google Maps myself and others have discovered, and it's because the places, details, distance matrix, directions, all of these APIs, places, except for geocode and elevation, have new REST APIs in the back end at Google called routes. So the community has asked that this MCP server get updated to match the new routes API. So I can't do point-to-point maps yet. That will get fixed. We're going to talk about Slack next. And I just started with Slack, and I found that if I hard code the channel, it works wonderfully. This is my problem right now. My professional Slack room that I'm using has for some reason it has a high number of channels. And this is returning 100, maximum 200 channels at a time. It does try to paginate and go to the next page, but it's not waiting until all the pagination is done to find my channel. Now later tonight I may try my TypeScript skills and see if I can push code up to this repository and make a pull request to see if I can fix this. But for now, if I hard code the channel, it works just fine. Okay, next is the sequential thinking. Now this is one tool, and this is a great tool I would suggest to start with. as a hello world tool if you're going to try to integrate an MCP server, because it's a single tool with inputs that will make sense to you. And this sequential tool is designed for breaking down complex problems into steps, planning and designing with room for revision, analysis that might be needed, course correction, problems where the full scope might not be clear initially, tasks that need to maintain context over multiple steps, and situations where irrelevant information needs to be filtered out. It sounds absolutely perfect for packet capture analysis, doesn't it? Especially multiple packets in a PCAP, or complex questions that you might want to ask it. So I've gone ahead and integrated that. Now when I say integrated that, what do you mean? Well, in Git, I cloned that server folder. So let me open a new window and I'll show you the folder, what I mean by this. So I cloned the servers folder that has all of those source server examples. For sequential thinking, or for GitLab, or GitHub, or Google Maps, or any of these example servers, I take the folder and I move it into my folder. However, I rename the Docker file and put it in my own Docker file folder, and I'll show you some of the other adjustments that I've figured out that I have to make. But otherwise, it's more or less ready to go, more or less. So, I bring in the different Docker files from those MCPs. Here's the sequential, these are only 20 lines of code. Now, at the top, I changed the path to where I put the folder in front of these two copy lines. And I figured out that I need to keep the server alive, so I do a little cat random to keep the node server alive. Don't know if that's necessary. Through my trial and error, I figured out that that helps, or it does work for me. In my .env, I add any required keys that I need, and in my Docker Compose, I simply scale to the next image that I need. Slack MCP server looks like this. I give it a port, I give it a name, I give it the path to the .env file. There's the sequential thinking, there's the Google Maps. They're all in the same back-end network, so they can all talk to each other. Now, the only thing that I needed to do was this tsconfig file. So I can show you what one looks like from the server folder. Let me go back to that and show you what the base file looks like and what my trial and error has figured out. So if we go to these tsconfigs, this is what they look like here. Okay? Now I have figured out through some trial and error that they need to look more like this, with a target and a root and an output dir. This is what I put in every single one of my config.ts files. You should not have to touch the index.ts. You shouldn't have to touch this file. But if you want to change things, if you're a developer, if you want to get into the guts on how this MCP is working, this is the abstraction file for the APIs or the SQL queries or whatever the MCP happens to be doing. What you do need is the README. So at the bottom of every README, you're going to see how to integrate this with Claude Desktop, as well as how to integrate it with Docker. Not necessarily how I've integrated with it. Yeah, so this is important, this little section here for the Docker. And I'll show you why and how I use this. Okay, so some instructions on how to get your API token, for example, but there's going to be a list of tools. This list of tools needs to be translated into tools that we can call Pythonically from our code. So I'm not adjusting my MCP client at all when I scale these servers or my server. I'm just adjusting my Packet Copilot to import more and more foreign tools. And up here we have the tool definition for, say, that Slack get user profile that lines up with the README. All right, so that's it. You make tools that match the README in your implementation of code, and away you go. So let's go ahead and run this really cool prompt that we have that's going to do a lot of different things. And it's hard to believe that this is just from human language, right? But we're going to go ahead, I've already gone over it, and we're going to hit send. So it sends the query and it sends the PCAP and starts a thread. For logging purposes, let's take a look at what's going on. Obviously, maybe not to some, but the first tool it's going to call is the PCAP rag tool. So let's go ahead and get this into vectors so we can start doing retrieval augmented generation against the packet data. Right? So this is the first tool that it usually calls. Now it's calling a bunch of network tools. Now it's even calling the maps elevation tool. And we're going to look at the logs and make sure all these tools are still working. They were working as of earlier this morning. And now it's going to start sending messages to GitHub, to email, to Slack. And we're going to take a look at the messaging that we get. I don't think it invoked the sequential thinking API, but maybe it did. So let's take a look at this this run here and take a look at what is going on. So the PCAP rag tool makes sense. All the various networking tools, okay. The maps elevation tool, maybe called a little early. Yeah, because it didn't actually do the geo lookup yet. So my prompt might have been a little explicit. So there's the elevation. No, it got the elevation. So then GitHub create report, send email, Slack message. All as one block of tools, which is interesting. And if you go to ChatGPT here, I've figured out in this GUI, you can see here called. So it was the ChatGPT made the decision to call this tool. Pretty neat, right? And you can see called for the Slack post and the various inputs and the various data that it has access to make those posts. So did we get everything? Let's go to the GitHub and see if we got the GitHub file. Now, did it give me the file link in the response? Here's the final answer. Here we go. So there's the GitHub link. I don't even have to go looking for it. 1 minute ago, there's the March 25th packet capture analysis report. So there's the report with all that great stuff, including elevation, like we asked for. just to show you that the Google MCP works. Okay, and then, I'm sure in my email then, I'm going to have an email. The email tool, yeah, there's the email. All right, and then let's take a look at the Slack message. Here's the Slack message, highlights from the packet capture. Now, I don't know, should I record this? I guess so, I don't know. Can I talk back to this? / at selector copilot, like what else can you tell me about the packet capture? I don't know if that actually is going to do anything. I think it's a one-way street. I don't think my server's listening or the Slack MCP can do it that way, right? So this is not going to work. But to be able to dump messages into Slack with emojis and stuff is pretty cool. So that's pretty neat. So again, I've integrated 3 MCP capabilities by using that copy-paste methodology. And let me just show you something. Let me go back. Just to my very first message into Slack, because Jeremy Shulman loves chatbot and chat ops and is a big hero of mine. So I've added into this room, and tomorrow he's going to wake up and see, hello Jeremy, here's the first working Copilot to Slack MCP message with this deep analysis here. Now again, I did not see the it didn't do this time. It did not run. So let's try this again. The same prompt, but we're going to adjust it just slightly here. So we're going to move the please use your reasoning closer to the start of this prompt instead of burying it in the middle of the instructions. So we're going to change this to a capital G, go, and we're going to remove this and move it back to the start. I just want you to see it in action because it's quite a remarkable MCP. It's quite a remarkable tool. Now, I find also it only invokes the tool if it needs to. This information, this prompt, it's quite a simple little PCAP and it really doesn't need to invoke that level of... so what can you tell me about this packet capture? And I'm going to say using your step-by-step reasoning and what's it called again? Sequential thinking. Now my only concern is that it's going to invoke the sequential thinking tool first, and that might not be a problem, or it'd be a bad thing. Okay, so it did grab the PCAP tool first. And now, hopefully it's going to do some sequential thinking. So now it's running the dig tool stuff. I didn't see the sequential thinking yet. It's hard to make that, it's hard to trigger that MCP, to be honest with you. No, it's already creating reports and stuff, so it didn't actually do the sequential thinking. How can I force that? I could try a more complex packet capture or a different packet capture. Yeah, but this is all working very well otherwise. So, at the end, take your time and give me several possible scenarios of what is happening in this packet capture. See if I can force the issue here. There we go. Okay, so there's the sequential thinking. All right, so it's going to do some sequential thinking. Load the provided PCAP file. Examine its content. So yeah, all right. And it knows the next thought's needed. It's running the PCAP rag tool and then back to the sequential thinking, PCAP rag tool, back to the sequential thinking. And now it's going to invoke the networking tools. We're going to look at this trace. This is what I've been trying to achieve for demo purposes, is to actually get the sequential thinking. Now, over natural questions that the universe is going to have, some of them are going to need sequential thinking and complexity and different reasoning. So here we're still going to get all the different emails and all that stuff. And here we're getting back to the sequential thinking, and now it's going to send highlights into Slack next. So it actually helps, route. There we go. Step-by-step findings and actions. And we get really good data out of this. Detailed report is on the GitHub, and it's even in Markdown, right? And we have all this great stuff that included the reasoning. So let's take a look at the waterfall of that last request. We don't need to look at the email, but I did get an email. So let me refresh this. Did it send the Slack? Yeah, here it is. Okay, and this Slack is really good. There we go. With the GitHub link, summary. Oh, it even has the GitHub information in the Slack room. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? Really cool. And why did it give me an error on that run though? Recursion limit of 25. So it hit a limit in the recursion. You can increase the limit by setting it. Okay, so there's a key I can set to let it recurse more. 25 is pretty good though, although it should have maybe had a few more attempts. So this is going to be a huge waterfall, right? Where we can see the sequential thinking with the comprehensive report now logged and emailed. Disseminating highlights to Slack is next. Start crafting a concise message for colleagues, sharing the pivotal data and outcomes derived from the analysis. Total thoughts 5. But because I have all of these other smaller tools, the sequential thinking is doing quite a bit of heavy lifting. Now it didn't crash. It didn't crash, and I got the answer, but it did fail in terms of my logging and my actual, end. So I'll have to keep an eye on that. That's interesting. That's interesting. So thank you. More on MCP, more on MCP. I head home tomorrow, so to be quiet tomorrow, quiet through the weekend as I catch up with my family. But please bring your questions, bring your comments. What's really, I think, inspiring to me is just that the message is getting out. I've seen some comments on the YouTube video. I've seen some LinkedIn posts. I've seen some LinkedIn comments. People are starting to build agents. People are starting to try MCP. That my message is resonating for some reason or good reason. So that's awesome. Thank you. You really inspire me when I hear about your success. I don't do this just out of vanity. I'm trying to help people get ahead of the curve and really understand what's coming their way, and that development can be easy now, very easy. And the use of artificial intelligence is dramatically changed from even just 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago. So thank you again, and good luck on your journey.